Sometimes life collapses without warning, without screams, without a chance to defend yourself. For Renata Aguirre, 7 words scribbled in a note were enough to destroy 8 years of dreams and love. Alone, betrayed, and in debt, she saw her world crumble on an ordinary morning. But what seemed like her end became the birth of a new woman, stronger, freer, more invincible. This is the story of someone who was broken, only to learn how to fly. The silence of the apartment had become a living entity, a suffocating presence that followed Renata from room to room. 3 days had passed since she found the note, 72 hours during which she had gone through all the stages of grief without stopping at any of them. Denial gave way to anger, anger to bargaining, bargaining to depression, but acceptance seemed to remain at an insurmountable distance. During those 3 days, Renata had sent 214 messages that went unanswered and made 57 calls that were never answered. She had contacted mutual friends, family members, co-workers, even the bartender at the bar they frequented. No one knew anything, or at least that's what they said. It was on the 4th day, when the initial stupor began to fade, that Renata opened the mailbox for the first time since the abandonment. Among advertisements and bills, she found an envelope addressed to both of them. She opened it with trembling hands, hoping to find some clue, some explanation. Instead, she found the first link in a chain of debts she knew nothing about. What? Do you mean 3 months late on the car payment? She muttered to herself, incredulous at what she was reading. I transferred the money to him every month. That was just the beginning of the discovery. During the next 48 hours, Renata uncovered a financial reality that had remained hidden under the carpet of blind trust. The financed car was about to be repossessed. The credit cards, all in her name, had accumulated a debt of 35,000 euros. The rent for the co-working space where he was supposedly developing his startup hadn't been paid for 3 months. And worst of all, she discovered she had signed as guarantor for a personal loan she had no knowledge of. I need to talk to a lawyer, she told her best friend Lucia as she collapsed onto the sofa in her living room. Everything is in my name, Lucia. Everything. Renata, there's something else you should know. Lucia squeezed her hand tightly, with that look that anticipates a deeper wound. I saw him yesterday at the shopping mall. He was with Elena, the designer we met at your office inauguration. They seemed intimate. Elena, the interior designer who had decorated their co-working space. The woman Renata had personally hired, using her own savings as a down payment. The same one who had praised their relationship, commenting on how fortunate she was to have someone so entrepreneurial and visionary by her side. How long do you think they've... Renata couldn't finish the question. From what I could gather, they've been dating for 3 months. They bought an apartment in the northern area. I'm sorry, Renata, 3 months. The same time the debts had been accumulating. The same period in which he had started coming home late, becoming distant, talking enthusiastically about new projects that required investment. The revelation was like a punch to the stomach. She hadn't just been abandoned, but consciously defrauded by the person who swore to love her. He hadn't just left. He had meticulously planned his escape, making sure to leave her drowning in debt while building a new life with another woman. That night, alone in the bed they once shared, Renata cried until her eyes were swollen and her throat burned. She cried for the lost love, for the betrayed trust, for the wasted years. She cried for the humiliation of having been so naive, so gullible, and above all, she cried for the woman she had been, one who measured her worth by the approval of a man who didn't deserve even a single tear. At dawn, with reddened eyes and the determination of someone who has nothing more to lose, she made a decision. She would not declare bankruptcy. She would not run away from the debts, leaving them to her parents. She would not sink into self-pity. She would pay every cent, rebuild her life from scratch, and someday, when the pain was just a distant memory, she would find a way to be grateful for this fall. Because deep in her heart, in that place that wasn't completely destroyed yet, she knew that the greatest transformations are born from the worst tragedies. What she didn't know then, as she prepared coffee in a cup for one instead of two, was that the universe had much more ambitious plans for her than mere survival. That in some lives, abandonment is just the gateway to a superior destiny. And that sometimes, those who hurt you most deeply are merely instruments of fate to awaken you from a mediocre dream. The small cafe in the city center had become Renata's refuge over the past few weeks. Surrounded by the hustle and bustle of strangers, she found some comfort in anonymity. No one there knew her story. No one looked at her with that mixture of pity and morbid curiosity that she had begun to detect in the eyes of her friends and family. With the coffee cup between her hands, she was reviewing her resume on the computer screen for the umpteenth time. 8 years out of the job market weighed like a burden on her shoulders. She had dedicated that time to supporting her partner's supposed entrepreneurship, managing finances, communication, organizing events, contacting potential clients. She had been the invisible hand that sustained that house of cards while he took the credit. And now, at 35, she found herself trying to convince strangers that her experience had value. "May I sit down? Everything's full." Renata looked up to find a woman in her 40s, with short hair dyed an intense red and the designer glasses that framed lively, intelligent eyes. Without waiting for a response, the stranger settled into the seat across from her. "Sofia Vega," she introduced herself, extending a hand with perfectly painted black nails. "Sorry for the intrusion, but I've been watching you rewrite the same line of that resume for 10 minutes. Either you're an obsessive perfectionist, or you're really desperate for that job." In other circumstances, Renata would have responded with a polite smile and an evasive comment. But something about this woman's frankness, in the complete absence of social filters, completely disarmed her. "Both, I suppose," she responded with a sincerity that surprised herself. Perfectionist by nature, desperate by necessity, the woman studied her with a penetrating gaze, as if she could read between the lines the complete story behind that simple confession. "Let me guess," she said, taking a sip of her own coffee. "A breakup that has left you financially devastated? An unexpected child to support? A costly illness?" The first option. Renata found herself smiling for the first time in weeks. "Is it that obvious?" "I've seen that look before, honey. In my own mirror 15 years ago." She gestured toward the computer. "May I?" Without waiting for confirmation, she turned the screen toward her and began to read Renata's resume with a critical eye. Occasionally she would nod. Other times she would frown or let out a sigh. Finally she returned the computer to its original position. "You have talent," she declared firmly, "but you're selling yourself short. All this," she pointed at the screen, "sounds like an apology. Although I don't have formal experience in marketing, I have managed campaigns for a local venture." "That's garbage. What you should say is, I developed marketing strategies that increased visibility by 40%. No apologies, no minimizing your experience." Renata blinked, surprised by the precision of the analysis. "Are you in human resources?" Sophia let out a laugh that attracted several looks. "No, dear. I'm the founder and CEO of Nexus Digital. We specialize in digital transformation for small and medium-sized businesses." The name resonated in Renata's memory. Nexus Digital was a small startup that had begun to gain notoriety in the past year. It wasn't among the big players in the sector, but it had a reputation for being innovative and, above all, for having an enviable work environment. "I'm looking for an assistant," Sophia continued, taking a card from her purse and placing it on the table. "Someone organized, discreet, with initiative, but who knows when to keep their mouth shut." The salary isn't stratospheric, but it includes complete health insurance and flexible hours. Why me? Asked Renata, distrustful after months of low blows. You don't even know me. Sophia looked at her fixedly, with a mixture of compassion and toughness. Because I recognize the look of someone who has nothing to lose. And that person will work twice as hard as anyone with a safety net. She got up, leaving her coffee half finished. You have my number. If you're interested, call me before Friday. If not, good luck with that resume. And so, as abruptly as she had appeared, Sofia Vega left, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and the first real opportunity Renata had seen in weeks. 3 days later, Renata was crossing the glass doors of Nexus Digital's offices. Located in a renovated old warehouse, they preserved the industrial charm with their high ceilings, exposed pipes, and abundant natural light. The space was open, with strategically distributed workstations, abundant plants, and a rest area with brightly colored sofas and a small kitchen. You're early, Sophia greeted her, emerging from a meeting room. I like that. Follow me. I'll show you your space. During the first few weeks, Renata remained in the shadows, meticulously fulfilling her duties as an executive assistant. She organized Sophia's schedule, answered emails, prepared documentation for meetings, managed event logistics. She did everything expected of her with a quiet efficiency that didn't go unnoticed by her boss. However, Renata kept a secret. Every night after arriving at her new and modest one-bedroom apartment, the only thing she could afford after restructuring her debts, she would sit in front of her computer and study digital marketing, social media management, web analytics, basic graphic design. She absorbed knowledge with the voracity of someone who has discovered that knowledge is the only asset that no one can take away. The turning point came 3 months after she was hired. Nexus Digital was preparing its proposal for a potential important client, a chain of boutique gyms that wanted to reinvent their digital presence. The marketing team was blocked, unable to find an approach that would stand out among the saturation of fitness content on social networks. During a meeting that Renata was attending to take notes, the silence became heavy after the presentation of ideas that Sophia clearly considered insufficient. All of this is predictable, the CEO declared, removing her glasses with a tired gesture. We need something that makes people stop while scrolling, something that connects emotionally, Renata felt an idea forming in her mind, slowly crystallizing. With her heart beating rapidly, she broke her usual silence. What if we do a campaign based on failure? All eyes turned to her, surprised by the interruption from someone who normally remained invisible in meetings. Explain, Sophia asked, intrigued. All fitness campaigns focus on results, on perfect bodies, on success, Renata continued, gaining confidence as she spoke. But what really connects with people is the struggle, the vulnerability. We could create a series of real testimonials, unfiltered, about people who have failed again and again before achieving their goals. Not selling success, but the process and perseverance. Silence followed her words. Sophia observed her with an indecipherable expression. Finally, a slow smile formed on her face. Failure as a springboard, she murmured. I like it. It's honest, it's different. I want a developed concept on this for tomorrow. The next day, Renata presented not just a concept, but a complete strategy. Scars of victory. A campaign that would show the real marks that effort leaves on the body. Stretch marks, surgery scars, calluses, along with stories of overcoming. The proposal not only won the contract, but became a viral phenomenon when implemented, attracting the attention of specialized advertising and marketing media. For Renata, it was the first step on a path of professional rediscovery. Sophia, recognizing Her talent began to involve her more and more in creative projects, gradually moving her away from purely administrative tasks. What had begun as a survival job was transforming into a true passion. However, the nights were still difficult. Loneliness weighed heavily, and the debts, although restructured, remained a constant presence in her life. Sometimes, in the darkness of her small apartment, the memory of the abandonment came back with renewed force, bringing with it waves of insecurity. Was she really worth anything? Was she deserving of this new beginning? Wouldn't it be just a matter of time until everyone discovered she was a fraud, that she wasn't good enough? It was in one of those moments of doubt when she received a message from Sophia, sent in the early hours of the morning. Fire doesn't ask if it deserves to burn. It simply burns and transforms everything it touches. Stop questioning yourself and simply burn, Renata. That night, staring at that message on her phone screen, Renata felt something change within her. The pain was still there. The scars were real. But for the first time in a long time, fear was beginning to give way to something more powerful. Determination. The woman who had been abandoned was, at last, beginning to burn. Time has a strange way of transforming wounds. It doesn't erase them, it doesn't make them disappear, but it integrates them into the fabric of our story, turning them into part of our strength. For Renata, the following 2 years were a constant process of reconstruction, not only of her external life, but also of her relationship with herself. The Nexus digital office had changed. They no longer occupied the old warehouse, but had moved to a modern building in the financial district. The team had grown from 12 to almost 50 people, and Renata was no longer the assistant who took notes in silence. Director of Content, Strategy, she read aloud, looking with disbelief at the new plaque on her private office door. Sounds important. That's because it is, replied Sophia, leaning on the doorframe. You've earned it. The promotion had come after the overwhelming success of several campaigns designed by Renata. Her unique perspective, born from the experience of pain and reconstruction, had proven extraordinarily effective in connecting with audiences increasingly tired of the imposed perfection of social networks. She had developed what the team called the Renata touch, the ability to find genuine vulnerability in each story and transform it into a powerful narrative. Her latest project, Women Who Don't Stay Silent, a campaign to make visible the stories of women who had overcome situations of abuse and discrimination, had exploded on social networks, generating millions of interactions, and most importantly, a social conversation that was changing behaviors. They've invited you as a speaker to the annual Digital Marketing Congress, Sophia informed her, handing her an envelope. It's in 2 weeks. They want you to talk about the campaign and about your approach to creating content that really resonates emotionally. Renata took the envelope with trembling hands. During the past 2 years, she had worked in the background, creating brilliant strategies but staying away from the spotlight. The idea of going on stage, of exposing herself, awakened old ghosts of insecurity. I don't think I can do it, she murmured. I'm not good at public speaking, Sophia observed, her with that penetrating gaze that seemed to read beyond words. Renata, you've spent 2 years helping other people tell their truths. Maybe it's time for you to tell yours. The Congress was held at the city's convention center, an impressive glass and steel building with capacity for thousands of attendees. Renata walked through the crowded corridors, feeling the weight of curious glances. Her name had begun to sound in the industry, and many wanted to meet the mind behind the campaigns that were redefining emotional marketing. Dressed in an intense red pantsuit and heels that elevated her 10 centimeters above her usual height, she projected an image of confidence that she didn't fully feel. Inside, her heart was beating rapidly and her hands were slightly sweaty. Sophia walked beside her, occasionally greeting acquaintances, serving as a human shield against Renata's growing anxiety. "Breathe," she whispered. "Remember why you're here." Following the program, they headed to the main hall where Renata would give her talk in less than an hour. The space was already almost full, hundreds of industry professionals taking their seats, expectant for the imminent day of presentations. It was then that she saw him. In the cafeteria area, next to the networking tables, a familiar figure caught her attention. A middle-aged man, dressed in a suit that had seen better days, held a cup of coffee while anxiously looking around as if searching for someone. Beside him on the table, a stack of printed resumes revealed the true purpose of his presence at the event. Renata's stomach lurched. After 2 years, the sight of her ex-partner should have left her indifferent, but reality was more complex. Time had healed many wounds, but some marks remained sensitive to touch. "Are you okay?" asked Sophia, noticing her sudden paleness. "Yes, it's just that—" Renata didn't finish the sentence. It wasn't necessary. Sophia followed her gaze and immediately understood. "Ah, the famous ghost of the past," she commented with studied calm. "Less impressive than I imagined." The observation drew an involuntary smile from Renata. It was true. The man who had destroyed her life now seemed small, almost insignificant. The marked dark circles, the slightly hunched posture, the poorly disguised desperation in his gestures, all spoke of a steep fall. "Ironies of life," murmured Renata. "What is he doing here?" "From what I see, trying to find a job," replied Sophia. "The question is, what are you going to do?" The answer came in the form of an unexpected sensation. It wasn't hatred she felt. Upon seeing him, not even resentment. It was a strange mixture of compassion and, surprisingly, gratitude. Because without that abandonment, without that transformative pain, she would never have discovered her true potential. She would never have burned. "I'm going to give the best talk of my life," she responded with a calmness that emerged from a place of deep certainty. "And afterwards, maybe I'll thank him." The main hall was packed when Renata took the stage. The intense spotlights. She saw hundreds of expectant faces, devices ready to take notes, some even to record. Among the audience, in the third row, Sophia dedicated a gesture of encouragement to her. And at the back, almost hidden among the crowd, she distinguished the figure of her ex, who had decided to attend her talk. A part of her wondered if he had recognized her, if he would know who this confident woman in red heels occupying the stage was now. She breathed deeply and began to speak. Not about engagement metrics or viralization strategies, but about truth, about how pain can be the most powerful catalyst for authentic creativity, about how wounds, when exposed with courage, can become bridges to others. She spoke about women who don't stay silent, but also, without directly naming it, about her own path from silence to voice. As the words flowed, the initial anxiety transformed into a sensation of absolute liberation. Each phrase was another brick in the reconstruction of her identity. Each applause, a confirmation that her voice mattered. At the end of the talk, the ovation was deafening. Moved faces, some, even with tears, looked back at her from every corner of the room. It wasn't just a presentation about marketing. It had been a testimony of human resilience, of rebirth after devastation. Backstage, while receiving congratulations from organizers and other speakers, a familiar figure appeared in her field of vision. Her ex-partner, with an uncomfortable expression, approached with hesitant steps. "You were incredible up there," he said, in a voice that Renata found strangely alien, as if it belonged to another life. "I always knew you had talent, but this—" "What do you want?" asked Renata, without hostility but with firmness. The time for evasiveness was behind her. He lowered his gaze, visibly uncomfortable. Things haven't been going well lately, he confessed. The business with Elena failed. Well, it didn't work out. I've been trying to find something stable, but the market is difficult. Renata observed him in silence, recognizing the pattern. He hadn't come to apologize, but to seek a way out, perhaps a job opportunity, perhaps something more. I made a mistake, he continued, risking a direct look. I was immature, selfish. I left you with problems that were mine, and I'm sorry. I've thought a lot about what we had, about what we could have built together. Maybe we could try again, talk at least. The proposal floated in the air between them like a question awaiting an answer. 2 years ago, those words would have been everything Renata wanted to hear. They would have been salvation, validation, proof that she was worthy of being loved. But the woman in front of him was no longer the one he left behind. She didn't need his validation or his regret or his empty promises. You know, she finally responded with a serene smile. For a long time I waited for this moment. I imagined 1,000 times what I would say to you if you reappeared in my life. I prepared entire speeches, accusations, reproaches. But now that you're here, I realize I don't need to say any of that. She paused, observing the face of the man who had once been the center of her universe. You think you destroyed me, but you actually built me. By leaving me alone with the weight that was only yours, you forced me to discover a strength I didn't know I had. And for that, although it sounds strange, I'm grateful to you. The confusion on his face was evident. This was not the response he expected. I can talk to someone in the human resources department, he offered, quickly changing strategy. Your company is growing. Surely they need staff with experience in